Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Ali. I'm a final year medical student at Cambridge University, and in this video we're going to be talking about how to answer the common interview question of what did you learn on your work experience? The first thing to say is that there's really no wrong or right answer to it. For any of these interview questions, any book that you read, any video that you watch about how to answer interview questions, the only correct answer is what works for you. So really what you should be asking yourself is, what did you learn from your work experience, if anything? And you know, the point of videos like this and the point of interview books is just to give you some kind of idea of what you can say, some kind of idea of structure if you're a little bit unsure. Preferably the answer should come from within, as it were, and that's the best way to answer these questions. But, you know, if you're watching this video, it's probably a bit because you have some level of stress, anxiety, unsureness about the medicine interview, and that's absolutely fine. We all have some element of nervousness before our medicine interviews, and it's always good to kind of seek out more information. So I'll just say that up front, the correct answer is what is specific to you. But having said that, we've now got segments with 8 different medical students where they talk about what they said in their interviews and give you tips about sort of things you can say, how you can phrase it, that sort of stuff. And then at the end of the video, we'll have 2 mock interview answers. There'll be myself and my friend Kenny giving answers to the question, what did you learn in your work experience? But answering it as if we were actually medicine applicants, just to give you an idea of what a full answer might look like. And then right at the end of the video, I'll do this classic like, comment, subscribe thing, and I'll share my own thoughts about work experience and its value. And I'm a little bit cynical about work experience, so if you care what I have to say on the topic, then that's like towards the end of the video. If you don't, then you can just stop the video before that point and just, you know, get the tips on how to answer that question. So without further ado, let's roll through the clips of 8 medical students talking about what they said in answer to this question and tips that they would give you, and I will see you very shortly.
So talking about what I learned from my work experience, I was very real. Be careful because obviously you don't want to break confidentiality, but you can talk about different things that you've seen. So for example, when I was in GP, I talked about the fact that I noticed that my dad was so close to a lot of his patients. So we live on a very small island in Kent, and a lot of the people that my dad sees in their GP surgery are people that we live around. And I talked about how I loved that there was such a community feel and what a huge impact a doctor could have. So that was something that I learned from my work experience, was seeing actually that doctors are a bit more than just someone that you see in a consultation. They can really impact your life. Other things that I talked about were things like how hard working the doctors were, so like times that they arrived and times that they left, and talking about how I noticed that sometimes they were tired, sometimes they struggled. So talking about the pros and cons that you've noticed during your work experience, and mentioning how you feel that you would deal with them is something that I learned from my work experience. So for example, I said, you know, sometimes I do take a little bit longer than some people to do some things because I like to work through them, and I'm a bit of a perfectionist, but I noticed that with doctors that they're often under a lot of pressure, and that's something that I would be working on during medical school to improve. So stuff about not only like what you've seen, because a lot of the time when you talk about work experience, you're going to talk about literally the clinical things that you've seen. So I saw this disease or that, but talk about the skills and the characteristics that you notice of the doctors and how you can build those up within yourself. That's a really good way to describe what you've learned from your work experience.
So I think the main thing is to show what you've learnt from it. As everyone says, it's always about what you've learnt from it, not how much you did or what you did. So I would definitely be thinking about the transferable skills that you've seen other people use and that you have learnt yourself, and things that you want to learn in the future. So it's often things like teamwork is a massive part of medicine. So if you've seen a good cohesive team, for instance, I saw sort of an operation being done, and I talked a lot in my personal statement and in my interviews about how that team of scrub nurses, theatre technicians and doctors worked really, really cohesively together, and that taught me the importance of that for great patient care. You can also talk about the lessons that you've learnt, and things like I talked to a GP before I applied to medicine, and they sat me down and they talked to me about the financial difficulties, the pressure that was being put on the system, the ageing population crisis that we're coming into now, and all of those things were things that I put down, saying that I had actually learnt from and was excited to sort of pursue in the future and learn more about.
I think for me, a lot about work experience was just seeing how tough it was going to be. I think the main learning point I took was that a lot of the doctors were trying to dissuade me and tell me actually medicine's really hard right now to come into. I'm not sure you really want to do it, which I think was useful for me, because I think initially going in I was very much like, medicine's great, you're gonna be able to help people, it's great you're going to be able to do such an amazing job, but it doesn't always feel like that. And obviously going to work experience, you sort of see doctors who are tired, burnt out, and yet I think that's an important thing to know, because you have to go in realizing that it's not just this glamorous job where you're saving lives and like, you know, leading a team, and it is a lot of hard work, and I think that's something good to go into know.
I think in my work experience in the hospital, I felt a bit lost, and I didn't really do very much. I was kind of just standing around. So in that sense, it was quite hard to reflect on it. But I think there's always things you can learn even when you're observing. So I talked a lot about the MDT. That's kind of a bit of a buzzword. So the multidisciplinary team, seeing how the occupational therapist, the physiotherapist, the social worker, the doctor have worked in a team. So I think that's quite a good one to mention.
So I think first of all they hopefully have read your personal statement. It's not a given, so you could just remind them a bit about what it entailed. It's good to pick up, rather than on sort of the most exciting medical thing you saw, for example, the most cool surgery or the most innovative therapy, it's good to pick up on sort of doctor-patient relations, or how doctors work together in a team. And if you can think of an example of when you thought that the care you saw being given was particularly effective, or perhaps examples of where the care you saw wasn't all that effective and why that might be, that shows a greater depth of insight into what you learned from your work experience, rather than just name dropping a few operations.
People always worry that you need these super medical placements with lots of exposure to like all the procedures and all the healthcare, but actually you shouldn't prioritise that. You shouldn't prioritise going to a fancy national or international hospital over doing the really basic stuff with old people and other vulnerable people, such as people with learning disabilities. Because what they want you to learn is all of those complex issues with those demographics, the patient demographics that you will have to face as a doctor, rather than necessarily the ins and outs of how medical procedures work. They want you to have an appreciation of the people and how to handle those people well, and how to relate to those people. Those will really shine through much more when it comes to you being a medical student and doctor than you knowing what a cholecystectomy is, for example. So I personally learned some really important points in communication skills with old people and children with learning disabilities. I learned that discipline for children with learning disabilities has to be completely different, and you have to be very aware to change up your communication style depending on who you're communicating with.
I would say describe what you've done, describe things which you've seen, which gave you some thoughts or reflections, and well, just generally describe your experience and how it made you feel.
Okay, so that was 8 students giving their tips on how to answer the question, what did you learn on your work experience? Hope you found it useful. Now we're going to go into a segment of myself and my friend Kenny giving answers to the question in like a mock interview setting-ish. So we both tried to answer as we would have done at the time when we were applying to medicine. And this will hopefully give you an idea of what an answer might look like. Mine's a bit shorter than Kenny's, but I mean, both are equally valid. So yeah, hope you find that useful, and I'll see you after that for a bit of chat about what I think about work experience. So I did work experience in a few different hospitals in Pakistan and also a few hospitals in the UK. And that was quite interesting, contrasting the whole sort of developing country healthcare system with the NHS. And one of the things that really stuck out to me from my work experience was kind of the attitude of the doctors. In both places, the doctors felt that they were quite overworked, quite underpaid, and yet they were still sort of very happy to be doctors. Like I would ask them that, you know, if you won the lottery, would you still want to do medicine? And every single person said, yes, I would still want to do medicine. Although, admittedly, most of them said that they'd probably go part-time. But, I mean, that experience just kind of showed me that people who do medicine, and I'm hoping that'll be true of me as well, they genuinely do enjoy their jobs and they genuinely do find it really rewarding. So I'd say that was the biggest thing that I took away from my work experience.
So I'd quite a bit of a few things here and there of the work experience I did, but the one I think I learnt the most from was when I spent a year as a healthcare assistant at a local hospital, and my role essentially was helping patients with their personal hygiene, so things such as toileting and things such as feeding, and as well as basic monitoring basic like vital signs of patients. And so it was quite nice being in the hospital environment for a number of reasons. Like, firstly, it was really nice experiencing a shift in the hospital. The shifts that I did were 12 hours long, and I did days and nights, and I think that was really good to give me just a general sense of the kind of shift patterns that doctors have, and how you've got to be able to kind of live your life while working. So that's something big that I learned also. As a healthcare assistant also, you work with nurses and you work with doctors, you work with physiotherapists, you work with phlebotomists, you work with so many people just in different capacities. So it was a good way to first of all learn about the other roles in hospitals, but it was also a good way to see what life is like in a multidisciplinary team, and that people bring different things to the table, but all the care is patient-centred. And another thing I learned there too is just how to interact with patients. I think people take for granted that when someone's in hospital, it's essentially probably one of the worst times of their life, and it taught me how important it is to look at a person as opposed to as a disease, or as someone who needs feeding, or as someone who needs to be taken to the toilet, or someone who I need to help wash. So that was definitely something that I learned from my experience that definitely benefited me.
Okay, so now we're at the final segment of the video. If you're still with us, thank you very much for watching so far. Hopefully you've learned something from the 8 medical students giving their tips on how to answer the question, and then hopefully you found it vaguely useful to hear myself and Kenny give a full answer to the question as if we were in an interview. So yeah, hopefully that was useful. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about work experience and my feelings about work experience. Just because I think work experience is one of those things that it's become like a really important part of the medicine application. And I think the idea behind work experience is that you start off thinking, I might want to do a career in medicine. And then you research a little bit about it, and then you do some work experience. And then theoretically this work experience makes you think, oh wow, having experienced life in a healthcare setting, I've realized that this is for me, this is what I want to devote the next 60 years of my life to. And I think there's a massive flaw with that. In fact, I think it's almost like deciding that you want to marry someone based on spending just a handful of kind of dates with them. And I'm not saying that's an inherently bad thing, because I know in Asian culture and the whole Muslim thing and stuff as well, there's a lot of kind of value in kind of just meeting someone a few times and then kind of committing to marry them, because they know that most of the happiness of a marriage, most of the stability of a marriage comes from the effort that you put into it, rather than pre-existing compatibility. See the works by Alain de Botton. The Course of Love is a rather good book that I would highly recommend you read if you're interested in this kind of topic. But I digress. We were talking about work experience. I think work experience is kind of like that. It's really unfair to expect a 16, 17, 18-year-old, normally, sorry if I'm discriminating against the grad students here, but everyone discriminates against you anyway because you're quite old. Where was I? Yes, work experience. I think it's fundamentally unfair to expect a 16, 17, 18-year-old, whatever, to commit themselves to a lifelong career in medicine by just having a few days or even a few weeks experience in a hospital or a GP, because that doesn't tell you what life is actually like. And even if it did give you a very good indication of what life as a doctor is like, I don't think that's a good enough reason to go for a career. I was talking to a lot of my friends about this over the last few weeks in preparation for this video, and we all kind of said similar things, that on our work experience, we didn't really gain that much from it. This is hospital work experience. We all gained quite a lot from our volunteering, and I volunteered at a hospice and at a school for special needs students, which was really, really good. I'm talking about specifically about the hospital work experience, which seems to be the kind of work experience that's like the holy grail of work experience. Everyone tries to go for the hospitals. They try to go to hospitals abroad. I went to a hospital in Pakistan, I went to a hospital in Nigeria, all of this kind of stuff, because they think that hospital work experience gives them some kind of special insight into life as a doctor. And I think this is unfair, and my friends actually agreed with me in this regard. We'd all kind of decided in advance that we wanted to do careers in medicine. We decided because we liked science, we wanted to help people, it seemed like a good option. It's a very open option. You get to spend 6 years at university, which is so much better than spending 3 years at university, because university is just incredible. And everyone who graduates after 3 years regrets graduating because they're like, I kind of wish I was there a bit longer, because university is just fantastic. bloody love university. Anyway, we had all these reasons for doing medicine, and then we did work experience, and we did work experience to tick that box in our applications that, oh, you've done work experience. And none of us actually found it to be particularly useful. Like, I did work experience in a fancy cardiothoracic surgery centre in London, and yeah, it was cool watching heart surgery for about 20 minutes, and then the rest of the 7.5 hours I had absolutely no idea what was going on. My legs were sore, like, it just wasn't inherently valuable. Even nowadays, as a final year medical student, I wouldn't want to watch a heart operation for 8 hours unless I knew what was going on, because it's just a bit pointless. And this is the pattern that, like, a lot of my friends also found with our work experience. We didn't really enjoy it because you're just kind of following people around, trying not to get in people's way, kind of like life as a medical student. And we don't think we really learned much from it because we didn't know anything about the medicine side of it. And the only thing we could glean from it were kind of what the doctors would tell us. And in my case, most of the doctors were saying, don't do it, it's a bad career, you don't make much money, it's just not worth it. I think the only useful things people get from work experience are if you can talk to a specific patient, or if you can genuinely see a good interaction between like a doctor and a patient, and if that moves you emotionally enough to make you think, you know what, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I think that's quite a kind of a romanticized version of events that we put in personal statements and we say in interviews. We say, oh, there was this one moment where I saw this amazing consultant talk to this patient and that changed my life. And I think that's kind of the expectation when it comes to work experience, that you have these moments. But, you know, I'm personally very skeptical as to how many people actually have those moments. I certainly didn't have any. The 5 or 6 people that I asked didn't have a single one of those moments on their work experience where they saw that. So I'm skeptical of whether those moments actually exist, and if they do. And I also don't like the fact that the whole culture around work experience is such that you're kind of expected to have these moments. Because I know when I was applying, I really struggled to come up with things that I learned on my work experience. And I sort of took that as a sign that maybe I should be doing medicine because I didn't enjoy my work experience. And I don't think that's really fair, because the reason to do medicine is not because you had this like emotional, sudden, cathartic moment where you suddenly realized, oh my god, it's like the ultimate career because I saw this doctor talking to this patient and it was amazing. It's because you genuinely thought about it and you realized it's like 50 years of your life devoted to constant like academic pursuit, constant like, you know, turning up to work every day, staying long hours, but you do genuinely get to make a difference in people's lives. And I think that's why people should be doing medicine, and that's why I think this whole thing about work experience is not ideal. Volunteering should be part of a medicine application, in my opinion, but getting work experience in a hospital or a GP, I don't know. I'm very skeptical as to its value. If you've done work experience in a hospital or GP and you found it useful, then please let me know in the comments below. I'm very happy to change my mind on this, but like at the moment, I really doubt the value of hospital work experience. Equally, if you're in the similar position that I was, that you've done your work experience and you're a bit underwhelmed, but you still want to do medicine because there are many better reasons for doing medicine other than I did it on my work experience and it was fun, then again, please leave a comment down below, and it'll be interesting to hear your perspective on this, because yeah, I'm open to changing my mind, but I've always been a bit wary of work experience. Anyway, this video is about how to answer the question of what you learned on your work experience. You'll see that if you look back in the video, despite the fact that I don't think I learned anything from my work experience, I still think I can give a pretty good answer to the question. And if you're in the same position as me, where you didn't really learn anything on your work experience, you still want to be able to give a good answer to the question, because like it or not, it is the state of the medicine application these days. Work experience is important, it is a checkbox, you have to do it, it is part of the application, and if you haven't done it, it looks a bit weird. So hopefully this video has given you some kind of insight into how you can answer the question. But like I said right at the start, the most important thing is that you answer it in a way that's specific to you. So if you did learn something from your work experience, please completely ignore my ranting about work experience and just talk about what was specific to you. I cannot stress this enough. The correct answer is what is the correct answer for you, as corny and cliche as that sounds. So yeah, thank you very much for watching this video. Hope you found it useful. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so, and I will see you in the next one. Have a lovely evening. Bye bye.